Thank you everybody for joining us. I am Ariel. I'm one of the co-founders of Not 9 to 5. And we are going to be talking about mental health with some lovely people today. I'm super excited about this, and I think the people that we have are people who are helping to pave the way for this conversation within our industry. I just want to start with a little bit of a content warning for people. The aim of the conversation is to have real and honest dialogue with these people. The discussion may contain information about grief, trauma, different types of mental health, substance use, depression, anxiety, and suicide. So if you at any point are feeling uncomfortable, feel free to leave the conversation. We are recording it, so you'll be able to rejoin it. If at any point you are seeking someone to speak to, a trained counselor is available if you text HOMES at 686868 in Canada, or in the States at 741-741. And Hassel has posted in the chat a link to our resources on our webpage, which have a ton of different counseling options and different types of different options for you to check out.
Awesome. So yeah, I just wanted a little quick housekeeping. I did want to let everybody know that please feel free to use the chat box at any point. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us as we're talking, because we can kind of come to the questions at the end or jump in depending on what the question is. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, everyone felt really free to do that at any point. We don't have to wait till the end to ask questions. And then the other thing I wanted to just point out is I'm going to be launching a poll. So the panelists, unfortunately, you won't be able to answer this, I don't think. But for all the attendees, I just put in a little check-in just to see how everyone's feeling at this moment. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but it would be nice to know how you guys are feeling too. And I'm going to leave that open, and then we'll kind of check the results at the end. So that's my housekeeping. I guess I should introduce myself too. So I'm the other co-founder of Not 9 to 5. So Ariel and I, as well as many other lovely volunteers, help us kind of bring Not 9 to 5 to life and keep it going. I grew up in the industry and restaurants, mostly front of house service jobs, moved into event life and event production world about 10 or 12 years ago. And ever since then, I have still lived in the event world, still do service, you know, jobs here and there, and started Not 9 to 5 about 2 or so years ago with Ariel. So I'm going to ask if people could introduce themselves. I feel like you guys will do a better job of introducing yourselves than I will. So if we want to just go, I guess, in the row, can we just start with Alexis? You're the first one I see in my window, and then run through to Jeanette, Christina, and Coulson.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Alexis Kronwald-deBruyn. I use she, her pronouns. I have been working in the restaurant industry for a little over a decade, but on and off. Worked a lot in public relations and event marketing as well, but then decided to land on, I really didn't love it. So I now do restaurant management as my full-time job, most recently at La Palma, which we are currently closed because of everything going on, but hopefully not for long. Yeah.
Thanks, Alexis. Jeanette.
So hi, everybody. My name is Jeanette Schepp, and I'm a mental health educator with the Canadian Mental Health Association. I come by that honestly because I've had my own experience with depression and anxiety. And my background really is in the corporate world. I have over 30 years, as you can tell by the white hair, experience in corporate HR. And so I try to balance both the HR function from helping employers around mental health, but also helping individuals around mental health. And we're seeing a lot more awareness and conversation about mental health pretty much at every corner that you go to. So that's a good thing. I think we still have lots of work to do. And, you know, I'm really excited to be here. I want to hear kind of what your experiences are and how we can work together.
Thanks, Jeanette. All right, Christina.
My name is Christina Vera. I use she, her pronouns. So I use a kind of catch-all of saying I'm a bar and beverage consultant. I've been working in hospitality for the last 14 years, and in the last year or so, I left my full-time management job and decided to do a little patchwork freelance. So that mainly consists, part of it is event production and curation, especially more on bar and beverage side for conferences, including Toronto Cocktail Week, which I'm the director of programming for, knock on wood, in October. I also teach spirits with Wine and Spirits Education Trust, and I do a bunch of series of charity work that bridges with hospitality, from small and local all the way up to larger scale productions like Speed Rack, which is a all-female speed bartending competition that raises money for breast cancer research. That's it.
Last but not least, Coulson.
Oh, hey guys. So my name's Colin Armstrong, Toronto chef. Started working in restaurants back in high school as a dishwasher, as we all do, and worked my way through the Toronto food scene, and then left for a couple of years just to travel and work in other restaurants and see what the culture is there and what kind of mindset they use. And in the end, worked in 17 different restaurants and a total of visited 15 countries in like 3 years. So I just learned a lot from those people. I'm trying to bring it back to Toronto. We're in the midst of opening a restaurant before this pandemic happened. So trying to keep that team afloat and doing where I can to like help out with other friends and their restaurants and businesses for takeout as we've kind of moved into that. So thank you for having me.
So first of all, thank you guys for joining. All the attendees and all the panelists. This literally couldn't happen without you guys. I feel like I grew up in an industry where we didn't talk about this shit at all. Everyone was just repress, stay quiet, keep it to yourself, get back to work, leave your shit at the door. And there was no fucking real talk. And there was no talk at all really about this stuff. So I, in the last couple of years with Ariel, have been trying to talk more about this and get real loud and proud. So for me, I just, really felt it was important to do this webinar because I miss seeing your faces, and I miss talking to industry people. I miss being around industry people. I miss hearing industry conversations, and it's just not the same through text. So seeing faces, hearing voices, and, I also know like there's a lot going on emotionally, and it's a lot to process, and I've been having a really hard time. It's very up and down. There's really great moments, but overall, it's just a lot. It's a lot to process. And so I thought, Ariel and I are both mental health first aid certified. And I kept hearing from the Mental Health Commission of Canada and other organizations saying, if you're certified, try to really create spaces where you can hold space, where you can have conversations, because you've gone through the program. And I thought, you know what, that's exactly what we're going to do. So seeing as it's Mental Health Awareness Month in the US and it's Mental Health Week here in Canada, put together this amazing panelist. And yeah, my depression and anxiety has been all over the map. Major grief, just watching what's happened in the industry, watching our industry kind of fall apart, but not, but kind of, and what's going to happen when it's reopened. I feel a lot of grief around that. I feel really sad sometimes. So I just wanted to really be real about these feelings and emotions, and with people that I know can equally be real and meet me where I am. So that's my personal share for today, and I'm going to pass it on to Ariel.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Hassel. That's it's hard. Like, I think that's the easiest way to put it, is that, everyone's feelings right now are so different and unique to their own self, but there's nothing right now that's easy. And I think it's about being good to yourself to, understand that you're going through something right now and be okay with it. Like, it's okay not to be okay right now, especially right now. You know, for me, I think you kind of summed it up with the peaks and valleys. Like, you know, there's days that are great and there are days that are really shitty. And I mean, I think the thing is with the shitty days, it's just about, you know, letting them be what they are. I think that's for me kind of a big part of it is, you know, I don't expect to be on point every single day. And it's hard, I think, coming from, you know, restaurants like Coulson. I'm sure you can empathize here with me. You know, in the kitchen, there's no room for not being on point. I mean, yeah, I guess front of house is exactly the same. Like, you're always on. And so right now, when, you know, there's really not a whole lot to do, and there's so much out of our control. And I think that for me can spiral quickly if I spend a lot of time thinking on it. You know, I don't like being in situations that I can't control. And, you know, for me, this is pretty much the ultimate situation that no one can control, right? So, you know, I think for me, that's really a big part of it. And the other aspect is the physical nature of this is, you know, I was really finding that the gym was keeping me grounded. And since gyms have closed, I've been trying to work out from home, and I've been trying to run and keep active like that. But I haven't really found a, you know, a home workout that is great for me. And you know what, like, that's just what it is. I'm kind of reminding myself to continue trying, because I think that's a big part of it. But it's amazing how much, you know, the mental health and the physical health are intertwined. You know, I think that, you know, just as a quick definition, like, you know, mental health is the state of your psychological and emotional well-being. And mental health is one of the parts of your overall health. And so it's interesting to think, if one of those, you know, elements in your overall health is out of whack, you know, how much the rest of your health can be out of whack. I'm going to pass it off to Jeanette. Can you share with us your actual definition for mental health, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I like to kind of open that question up to the group usually, because mental health can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? But I would say to you, you're absolutely right about the mind and the body connection. There's a saying that our mind and body share the same rent, you know, and most people don't think of mental health as being part of our overall well-being. They think of it as something separate than our physical health. And even the healthcare system, you know, when we go to the hospital, they're set up for all the physical ailments, but not so much on the mental health side of things. To the point where there's a lot of wait lists for care. And that's one of the things that we're all trying to get to is, when can we make mental health and mental well-being just as important as physical health? You know, we hear about the pandemic all of the time, and we're starting to hear about mental health now. And we are seeing a lot more attention being put on mental health. And I think we have a lot more work to do. But if I was to give you the quick and dirty answer around mental health, it's really about our mental well-being, realizing our potential, our ability to be confident, to enjoy life, to be resilient, bounce back from issues, and to cope from issues. Because none of us have had a perfect experience, right? These are all skills that we acquire over time. And I think sometimes we're really hard on ourselves to be mentally well, when the reality is that we're just doing the best that we can, right? And I think we all have to keep at it, just like you were saying around exercising. You know, we have to do things every day to keep ourselves mentally on track.
Yeah, I think that that's very true. Jeanette, thank you for that. And I wanted to kind of also add to what Ariel said about just that, you know, there's a lot of sometimes confusion around mental illness and mental health, and not everyone has a mental illness, but everyone does have mental health. And I think that oftentimes we may not think of it that way, because we all acknowledge we have physical health. And I don't know why that's not also like taught in schools when you're little, that, you know, just like you have your body and you have to take care of your body, your mind is in your body. It's not like it's somewhere off in another room. So because it's all interconnected, I think that that doesn't get talked about enough, at least, not, it didn't used to. It's obviously a much more mainstream conversation now, thankfully. So to take it to our industry and make it like really industry specific for a second, based on the research that Non-9-to-5 has been doing for about a year and a half, in our survey, when asked, do you work with any challenges to your mental health and or addiction? Our survey results show that 90% of hospitality, food, and beverage server workers say yes. And that's an astonishing high percentage. That is not a half, that is not a third, that is an epidemic. And that was, sadly, unfortunately, before COVID-19. So now also, they're saying in terms of negative impacts, ours is one of the industries that hit the hardest by the pandemic. And so in considering all of that, Lyle and I really wanted to bring these two questions to each panelist. And if we could go through from Christina and Coulson, Alexis, and then Jeanette, we'd also love to hear from you because I'd love to get your perspective as a mental health professional. So the first question is, how is your mental health right now? And the second question is, how do you cope with isolation and physical distancing?
Unmute myself first. All right, excellent. Yeah, so I would say right now, like today, is more or less okay, if very flat. I think the last 2 weeks have been relatively flat. The first 4 weeks were not. We're pretty much the opposite, and could change really quickly and would change often based on very, very little. It's kind of all intertwined. So I had done a lot of traveling for work before, and when I was in town, I did a lot of events. Part of I'm sure it's for everyone who works in such a social environment, especially now that they're saying that they think COVID was around a little bit earlier than January. So between the amount that I worked on pop-ups, and then I was in Las Vegas in November, I was in January in the Philippines, I was in Philippines and Japan and New York. I was in New Orleans at the beginning of Mardi Gras. And I was also in all of Northern Italy up until the day that they put in the first quarantine. And then I did Restaurants Canada show, which attracts 14,000 people, which was like about a week or so before we shut down. So there's a lot of anxiety about whether or not I was a carrier, if not at that moment, but was a carrier in general at some point in time, which I still don't really know. I'd been to the doctor, but at that time you didn't qualify just because you had been in hot spots or you had possibly been in contact. And that contributed to a lot. And I also lived alone. After I basically self-isolated aggressively for over 2 weeks, I ended up going to be with my parents, which has been generally a lot easier, but it's still a pretty big disruption to my normal day to day. It is nice in that now I'm the one who does groceries and there's someone around, and there's people around you, which has helped quite a bit. But it's still right now is weird because it's almost like a flattening. I found, and I don't know if it's for anyone else, but one of the most calming things for me, not in the moment, but about a week or so after it had registered, was on April 1st when they said to expect 12 more weeks. That day really felt really difficult, between rents and the difficulties of navigating it, and just how long 12 weeks is. July seems really far off. And then about a week or two later, I noticed that I changed how I was acting and I changed what I did, because even if 12 weeks ends up being a lie, 12 weeks is better than thinking that I can't even really start something, because what if next week I have to go back to what is my normal life, which is essentially freelance and hustling. I'd lost most of my contracts about a week before. I literally woke up one day and had about 90% of my income wiped out about a week before any restaurants started closing. So I saw the writing on the wall, but that also means that I either have to go back to restaurant work, or a lot of how I make my money isn't going to be a thing. after this. So it's not even like when everything reopens, I can pretend it'll be normal. When everything reopens is probably like months, if not like at least months. But yeah, that's like the check-in, I guess, part of it. But overall, I am lucky that I'm isolating with people. It was not great when I wasn't. Overall, even if there are obviously frustrating things about never leaving a house really with others.
Thank you for sharing, Christina. That's like, yeah, it's so much information to take in. And we were going through the experience of opening a spot, and it was like just months away from opening before COVID started. So like there was just so much planning and building the team out and putting the systems in place. And then all of a sudden that just came to a halt. And then for myself, after the first day of lockdown, I got sick. And then I was on my ass for 14 days in isolation by myself, and went through all the motions of like the shakes, the body aches, night sweats, and then it went into like the second week of, they call it the second week scaries, where it went into my lungs. And then I would call my doctor, nurses, and they said, sorry, honey, like you just need to stay home and we're not testing anybody. And so that was just a really hard part. And I just had like my best friend and my mom like FaceTiming me through that. And through that process, like the second week, I just lost my appetite so much, just like really hated food. Couldn't even eat like an appetizer, like size piece of like salad. And then to get back into motion, like I was really drained, and I was like in such a good place before that of such a strong routine of meditating, journaling, doing yoga every day, that like by the time I was sick, I just didn't want to do anything. And I couldn't even sit down and meditate to get into my own head and like trying to practice my practices that make me strong. And being a chef in a restaurant, you have to give so much of yourself to so many people around you. There's so many expectations of what the responsibility you hold, and you have to lead, and you have so many people underneath you that look up to you. And that was just like something was hard. And then to get back to my regular self was a long process of, I didn't do laundry for 3 weeks, and then it was like washing the sheets and trying to get back in a routine, and then being strong of, again, starting yoga and then going for bike rides. And then after being sick, I was in isolation for another 21 days, 3 weeks by myself, and trying to order groceries, trying to get sourced of like the stuff that I'm usually eating, and then doing the dishes. And then lately it's been like, now it's all right, back on track, reaching out to farmers and people that care for our restaurant and seeing what their needs are of like, hey, like you're growing again this season, you're not going to be able to sell as much of your stuff. So like, how do we preserve like the summer months? How do we like open a restaurant with like all the stuff that needs to be used up, and that we're being sustainable, like stuff's not going to waste. So those were really things I like spent the last 5 weeks. And then the last 2 weeks, I've been back into the workplace and keeping my mental health, trying to deal with Uber drivers and like the takeout business. And like, there's just so many other aspects of like, how do we make this amazing meal to nourish people that are at home, that are just relying on us to cook for them again. But then what's it going to look like to open a restaurant in the future and go back to the food that we want to cook, and work with the farms that we have respect for, and the people that do all this amazing work that are kind of in limbo as well. Like, are they like, okay, we have this many animals, where are these animals going to go if people aren't going to be eating them, you know? So it's just a lot to take in. And the road to recovery for me was really hard. But having like such a inner circle of some really great friends and family, like that was really important to me. And then back on track with doing an hour of yoga a day, just to strengthen my body, and meditation to work on myself before I can put myself back in to a world of unknowns. And there's so much information and so much media telling us what to do and what not to do, what the guidelines are. Canadians, again, are just so built to like be hibernation, like to be in hibernation. But as soon as like it's sunny out, like all the parks are full, and everybody's like, oh yeah, like last night coming back in the city after being in the woods just doing some foraging, like it felt like there was a party. Like Christie Pitts was just packed, and I was like, okay, well, people aren't going to take that. People are going to get sick. We're going to have to go back, and then it's just going to take a long time to get back on track. But then also working is like wearing a mask, wearing gloves, and making sure I'm sanitized and handling food. And you know, it's just a lot of things to think about. There's a lot of pressure, and but again, having these outlets like Not 9 to 5 and Hassel, being able to talk to her once a week and expressing my feelings has really helped. And I'm just glad to, you know,
somewhat get back to normal.
We're so glad that you're better, Coulson. That was scary for a bit there.
Thank you.
This is like, it's crazy when you know someone that's actually sick with it.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's really scary. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Alexis, how are you? How are you feeling with your mental health right now? And what do you do for coping with all of this?
So I also had quite a journey of hills and valleys. The first kind of couple days where everything sort of happened really quick, where, I was trying to stay positive, kept saying, this is our first pandemic we're dealing with, so let's all just try to do our best, and you're hoping for the best. But, when Trudeau made that announcement that everything was going to be closed down, I had like three sleepless nights, knowing that, 65 of staff that work under me are all not going to have a job. I definitely was in a place anxiety-wise that I haven't been in a really long time, some really serious panic attacks. I was super lucky I could get on the phone with my doctor via, for a virtual appointment. I'm super lucky that I have a sliding scale therapist. So, that was really great to kind of get me through that like initial really, really, really deep valley. And then a kind of wild thing happened where my like hypervigilance sort of snapped in place. A lot of my anxiety is rooted in trauma. So I have this hypervigilance of protecting myself, and that kind of snapped in really quickly. So I was oddly really fine for the first couple weeks. I was making, schedules, keeping super busy, running all the time. I had a marathon scheduled for the 24th, which is obviously not happening anymore. I was still keeping on that schedule, and I felt oddly great. And then the dip came again. So, your body was just working to protect yourself in that scenario, because that's what, my body's built to do. And I think a lot of people in the restaurant industry who have that sort of hypervigilance are really good at their jobs, because we are experiencing that all the time. Like, we're able to, and I think a lot of people in the restaurant industry maybe did feel okay, because they're like, hey, I can handle problems. I'm great at problem solving. I can figure out whatever. But then, when that deep valley comes again, and you realize, you're not busy, you don't have a ton to do, like, you kind of get that depressive bout again. And that's something that's kind of been going on for about 2 weeks for me now. And usually what I do to make myself feel better is make lists. Like, when I'm anxious, when I'm busy, when I'm working, I make a ton of lists. I schedule myself. I love writing in, like, physically writing in my agenda. But it's hard when, something that would normally take you 10 minutes is taking you 4 hours to do, because things are just kind of crazy right now. So for me, it's been learning to be easier on myself with that. Like, yes, I have those goals, and I have like lists that I'm making of things I want to accomplish in a week, but maybe they're not going to get done in the same way, and just sort of be easy on yourself the way you'd be easy on a colleague or a friend or a family member. That's a hard thing. And, like the whole mental health, it's kind of, I'm a very goal-oriented person too. So sort of being able to accept that we're sort of on a journey here, and we can't like get those goals as quickly as we normally were able to, has been super challenging. But I mean, what's gotten me through is forcing myself to still be physically active. I think that's something that I know for me drains me kind of drains out the anxiety in a positive way. And, gives me a little boost of endorphins, and also checking in with friends and coworkers and family. I've never talked to my friends as much as I have now. And I think just like keeping community going and being on top of that, and not letting those, not leaving people on red, and actually like responding and having real conversations and making the time to be there for each other, it has been, I think, what's helped me the most, for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Alexis. I don't know, that really resonates with me, what you were saying about the ups, like I'm fine, I'm okay. And then it's just like, whoa, I'm totally not. I had in the beginning, kind of like a calm in chaos epiphany, where I was like, holy shit, I stay calm in chaos. Oh, of course I do. I work in events, right? Like anyone that works in events, Christina, I see you smile. Like that's how we're trained kind of. And it's kind of scary sometimes though, when you see the link between that to trauma. And you're like, oh, right. It's a coping mechanism. Got it. Anyways, I'll pass it off to Jeanette on that note.
Yeah, I think, I can share some of the feelings that I had, when this whole thing happened around, we're in lockdown. It was like all of my future business was gone, just as all of you kind of experienced, right? And there's that immediate kind of, oh shit, now what, right? And then there is this calming piece where it's like, okay, I'll figure it out. There's at least some funds coming in from the government, whatever the case might be. And then, you get to a place where it's like, okay, now what am I going to do with myself, right? How do I keep myself busy? How do I keep myself going? Not only physically, but mentally. And, I gotta say, for all of you and all of your stories, you're fantastic. The fact that you're aware of what's happening for yourselves, and Coulson, you've actually had COVID, and that in and of itself is a scary thing to go through. But in addition to that, you've got all this other stuff happening, and it just impresses me how resilient we all can be, but you all commented on similar things: staying connected, keeping yourselves somewhat busy in terms of physically getting yourself working, right? It gives you some kind of purpose, and it gives you an outlet. And I think, just being kind with yourself, saying it's okay, I can't get out of bed today, or I'm going to stay in my pajamas today, is cool. It's for today. It's not going to be for the rest of the month, but it's for today. And there, in my deepest, toughest time, I just made a point of making my bed. If that's all I did, and I made some rock hard bread. If that's all I did for the day, it was okay, because, it was good enough. And I think we all have to remember to be kind to ourselves. We're so hard and so goal oriented and so used to being busy as a way of determining our self-worth, and we're good enough just being ourselves, and so often we forget that. So I'm kind of right now, I'm like, yeah, last week was a tough week for me, because it's like, okay, I've been through a bunch of emotions up and down, and it's like, okay, I've been home far too long now. I need to get out. And so luckily the weather was good, and I was able to get out, and that kind of broke it for a couple of days. And then, you just move on to the next thing, right? And it's great to be able to talk to people that get it, right? That understand it, and that can support you, and to say, you know what, we're all in this together, right?
Mhm.
And we have to do the best that we can, and it's okay.
That's such a great point. I think the connection element has been really a beautiful thing. I mean, it's reaching out to people who I haven't chatted with for quite some time, or even just being in contact more than I would normally. And I think normally everyone in hospitality has these crazy schedules, and so, like, I don't know about anyone else, but I find, like, there's people who I have that connection with naturally, and then there's people who I get busy and sidetracked, and things happen, and all of a sudden I haven't chatted with someone for longer than it should be. But this is an opportunity that I've kind of taken advantage of to actually reconnect with people. So out of this what's happening right now, what do you guys think that we can take from this and hopefully grow and evolve in our industry? like what kind of change can we improve, or what can we take from this time? I'll kind of open it up for whoever wants to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it'll be a lot. I think one issue that a lot of people are having is not only like the morning of the activity that they would normally do, but also I've had a lot of conversations with people as they start. A lot of people had dread going into work. This is something that I think a lot of the conversation that's happening in hospitality, with everyone posting pictures of themselves super happy at work, is kind of willfully leaving out of the conversation, which is also harmful, which is that, yes, people like having businesses or having jobs to go to, but a lot of people were not enjoying the jobs, were not being treated well in their jobs, or were not even enjoying the structure in which they had built in their place. Even as an owner and manager, a lot of people, if you ask them honestly, probably had toxic dynamics that were happening in their spaces that they didn't really know how to fix. And now everyone, and in this whole rush to, or not rush, but with everyone, when everything opens, I would love to hire back all my staff. It's hard to have those conversations about like, should every staff member be hired back? Do I actually want to go back to that job because I liked that job, because that job treated me well? Or am I so afraid that I can't get anything that I'll take anything and it wasn't as bad? And a lot of people are having a hard time having those conversations because I think there's a very big push in terms of how our industry is feeling like it has to advocate for itself as a real profession now, which is probably the worst time to have to advocate for ourselves as a real profession, that anything to the contrary would hurt the cause. And I think it doesn't hurt the cause. I think that there's ways to have healthy conversations about it, because what I worry about is that we'll reopen and it'll be like it was, but worse. Like everything that was slowly getting better over the last 10 years, now everyone's going to go in and everyone will be like, well, you're just lucky you have a job and you're lucky for everything. Because a lot of the structures that even us, like that we were part of, were also made it harder for us in the shutdown in terms of like wage, in terms of even how like we worked our bodies and everything. Like even when I stopped working in a regular job per se, one thing I noticed, and I'm sure this has happened for everyone who is still in the environment, is it's really hard to get rid of like that meditation of physicality as something that you do to calm yourself down. It's like front of house, you kind of walk in circles if you're on the floor, large circles, small circles. The idea of being behind a bar on a line and constantly wiping, they're things that when you're just in your house and you're doing, you realize how almost institutionalized your behavior is. I like looked at my step counter and I still walked quite a bit, not leaving the house because I think I was just pacing. But it's also something that I like to do. Like I think that's one thing with the physicality. Some people think it's like going for a run. And there's safe ways to go for walks and there's unsafe ways to do things now. But I think we don't always engage with the fact that yes, our job requires skill and passion and talent and palate, but it's also physical. So a lot of things, and it's social too. So a lot of things were taken away from us, and then a lot of different small aspects were shamed in terms of interacting with people and being close to people. So I think there's a lot of grieving in that. But that's all to say, if there's ways that we can keep the good parts, like the joy that we can spark in ourselves and each other, and like not go back to the bad parts because we think we're just lucky to be open again, that would be ideal.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Christina. I so appreciate the fact that you're pointing that out, because I think that sometimes we think about, like you said, like, yay, we're open, we have jobs, but it doesn't really work that way when like you're going back, like you said, to like a potentially toxic work culture. I mean, especially for our industry, I mean, we're infamous for toxic workplaces. And, you know, there's unfortunately a lack of like major psychological safety in a lot of the workplaces that we are putting ourselves in. And I think like that's one thing I'm really hoping that we can start to get, I guess, better organized about talking and actually having concrete plans of action, is that when we go back, we're actually prioritizing, you know, workplace mental health and workplace practices that are actually supporting the people that keep it alive. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you know, you can have the nicest restaurant space with the best food and the best, you know, menus and recipes and stuff, but if you don't have people that show up, you don't have a business model. Like the entire industry is held up by people. And sadly, there's a lot of priority on like the ingredients and all this other stuff, which is valid and important. But if you're not putting that same importance on the way that people are treating people, then yeah, we're going to end up in the same place. You're right.
Like quality and honoring your labor should be just as much a part of your business plan as getting a good rental agreement and having good suppliers. And if you prioritize always having access to certain types of produce or to a certain piece of equipment, and you can't also potentially prioritize your staff, then you're treating your staff as more disposable than say your range in your kitchen or your napkin or your linen service in front of the house. And I think that's part of it is also like there's tight margins, but there's also mindsets. Like before it closed, and I'll stop talking, but like I was consulting on a place that paid an all-in wage, which lots of people hate, lots of front of house people hate an all-in with tips included. But before CERB was announced, when it looked like people's EI would be the way that EI is normally structured, maybe get $800 or $900 max a month, that restaurant, even though technically they made less because of taxes and everything, they were actually going to be qualified for a very decent amount of EI that would have been livable and comparable in some way to what people are getting for CERB. If the government didn't create this new package, probably because they had to, because there's almost 1 million of us, plus, actually more than 1 million of us that are out of work that cannot survive on $800 a month, then we would have been out of luck because of how these systems are created. And that was really interesting to see, where it went from talking about this all-in payment system as if it was a way that would hurt us from getting staff, to me looking and being like, well, these are actually the only staff I know, or almost the only staff I know that are good, not because of their personal savings or their personal network, but they're good because of how they were paid and then how that payment pays into employment insurance and other programs that are there to help them.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We're going to be talking a lot about this also on a further webinar later in the month. On May 11th, we're hosting next week actually to talk about reimagining the industry. And two of the people we've invited are Adam and Tamara from Dispatch in Niagara. And they also are one of the only restaurants that offer a livable wage. And they said the same thing you just said, Christina, which is like before CERB kicked in, their EI would have been pretty good because of the way that they're paid. They're not reliant on tips. And it's interesting, tips comes up a lot when I ask people, like, you know, what can be done differently in the future. I don't know, does anybody else want to comment on this, Coulson or Alexis? Because you guys are...
just like we get such an opportunity for like to reopen with such a clean slate and really begin to start this new culture of taking care of ourselves even before the guests, you know? So that's like something that you just want to have this amazing team to come back to, that everybody loves coming into work and gets paid fairly with benefits, and then other added bonuses of like dining experiences and maybe cookbooks, you know? So it's just like taking this time and really having this community that we are in right now, like having these talks, like how do we make this happen, and what's the next step of moving forward, that everybody is on the same page, because it's going to take everybody to make this movement happen, not just a couple voices.
But, you know, I have to say, the fact that you're having the conversation is really showing that there is a shift. And I think, Christina, your concern about how this can go can be minimized if you continue to have the conversation, and if you continue to kind of push people outside of their comfort zone around making these changes. Because we all want to be respected. We all want to be treated fairly. And, you know, you can't give good customer service unless you're feeling like you're getting good customer service from your bosses, from, you know, whoever they might be. So, you know, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. there's always a lot of work to do because you're asking people to change their behaviors and change the way they think. But if you want people to feel valuable in an industry, you need to start with yourselves, right? Like, I feel valuable, I feel I'm contributing, and I'm going to show it, right? That's my 2
Yeah,
cents.
I think that's such a great point. I mean, I think you can't underestimate the importance of psychological safety. I think that when people are feeling that there is a sense of psychological safety in the workplace, you know, they perform better. And I think, you know, that's a separate element altogether, is that in order to maximize performance, it's actually creating that environment where people feel okay to make mistakes. And what that shows is that they're actually trying things. They're actually expressing themselves and they're expressing ideas. And that's how, you know, results will actually happen, is, you know, through that. So, you know, I agree 100% with everything you guys have said. And, you know, for me, again, imagine the fact that we've had a chance to hit pause here now, and we're able to actually come back, like you said, Coulson, with a clean slate and just say, okay, well, look, you know, we acknowledge it's not going to be the same. We acknowledge it's not going to be different. But what we're going to fight really hard for is it not to be worse. We're going to fight really hard for it to be better and to make it so that, you know, we are doing the research we need in the same way we would for a dish or a drink, to figure out how we can make our environment better and how can we make the overall culture better.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the experience of working at a job where it's not a safe or healthy work environment, but, you know, I'm making great money, and you are just in the habit of doing that. So there's not really the sense that you can kind of break out of it. That it's the weird silver lining to the situation that we're in now, is people kind of can have that time to take a step back and really reevaluate if their workplace is a safe, healthy place to go back to. So even though, you know, there is that fear that, like Christina said, that people are going to feel the pressure to go back, because what other option do they have? But, you know, maybe it's also a chance for people to sort of reflect on, you know, maybe their other passions or interests, or just kind of take a look at some other options of other places to work. Or, you know, do I feel safe? Do I feel like my work environment's healthy? Am I taken care of? So hopefully some people can make some choices out of that if they feel like they have the power to.
And I think it's like our responsibility to make these choices, because what's going to make the next generation of people want to open restaurants, work in restaurants, when we're airing so much of our dirty laundry that like everybody's just suffering and just getting by? And why would you want to go, like, physically, like mentally make that choice to go into that industry?
Yeah, I totally agree, Coulson. And I think that, you know, it's not going to be a quick change. These are archaic principles, and we've inherited from a really long time, you know, and they keep going and they keep going. They keep getting passed from one generation to the next generation. And, you know, every time it gets a little bit better, there's little tweaks and stuff. But now we get the chance of not just cracking that generational pattern that's happening, but also this pandemic has given us that. Like, I think in every crisis, there's a danger and an opportunity, and we're still kind of in the danger part, but we're starting to enter the opportunities as well, where we're starting to see things like, but do we have to do it that way? Like, that's how we used to do it, but do we have to just like keep doing it that way? You know, and I think it's important, and I would encourage everybody listening or watching is ask those questions. You know, oh, sorry, somebody just put in a question, so I'm going to read it out loud. Do any of you have takeout continuing before we're allowed to open? I've struggled with the back of house team who feel vulnerable being on the front line in the name of trying to keep business afloat. All back of house do have the choice to work or not work for the same compensation, but there feels like a further divide of front of house versus back of house will come from this. That is, thank you, Mandy, for writing that. That is really interesting. Does anybody want to comment on that?
I mean, I can comment. So I'm in the process of structuring that right now. And I definitely feel conflicted the same way you've expressed. Just, you know, one side definitely, you know, want to try to keep businesses, you know, afloat as much as possible. And on the other side, I don't want to put anyone at risk. And, you know, just by, you know, going out and taking transportation to get to work. So as you have expressed, I've given everyone an option to do it or not do it. And I'll be around as well. So I mean, it's not like I'm doing it and throwing people into the way or into the line of fire. I don't really have a good answer other than to make sure we're empathetic and as careful as possible. I mean, I think that in the moment that someone is expressing, even though they maybe consent to it, maybe they're consenting out of the fact that they feel guilty for not. So just really making sure that they are on the same page and comfortable with it and is a big part of it, and making sure that you're as careful as possible with it. But I mean, it's a really dangerous time, like you said. I mean, there's not really a good answer there, unfortunately.
Yeah. Some places have been using some front of house to assist with deliveries or with processing. I will admit I don't think it has to exacerbate a divide depending on what kind of place you're running, if only because once everything is open, if you read the plans that they've been releasing, it allows service to tables, but it distances guests from each other, which essentially is codifying that servers and wait staff are not in the same, they have to wear masks and everything, but it's going to be hard for everyone. It's going to be hard if you're a dishwasher, and the idea that you have to process everything that's coming through, unless you want to go full high waste and use paper cups and plastic for everything. My friends ran a club. I know clubs won't exist for a while, but that last weekend, the concept of picturing bussers picking up every glass and then having to wash it sounds small, but like it actually felt so unethical to do that in the middle of a pandemic that I like almost wanted to cry. And there's a lot of, I think it is hard that a lot of the people who are being relied on right now are the people who are the lowest paid, and often the ones that are not, people don't look at it as skilled. But I think that there's ways of honoring that service and finding ways to make it as easy with as much space, maybe different hours than you normally would, more breaks, more understanding. Like if this crisis means that we stop pretending that it's great not to take a sick day, if that's the only thing that like our industry takes away from this is that people can call in sick, that's actually like a really big thing that we need changed. So I think there's a lens to look at it as really acknowledging the burden that you're putting on them by asking them, but allowing them space to not only necessarily reject full out, but maybe to have days where if their anxiety is really high and they can't go in, then they're allowed to voice that, and they're not letting you down or the team down.
So well said. I mean, honestly, when it comes, like I hadn't even thought about that, like clearing glasses, Christina, like that's horrifying as like a server. Now that I think about that, like doing it now, that's something I did for years, not even thinking twice. But now, I mean, it's a totally different.
I have a theory that people who've worked in high volume places have really crazy immune systems because of all the glasses
for sure
we've touched and like done everything that
we totally have.
Especially the lack of people. Like I know Coulson, you were sick, but I'm still surprised by like how few people I've heard of in hospitality that have been sick that I know, like across Canada and in the States. I know of a lot of people's family members. It's conjecture, but I just mean we expose ourselves a lot, and many of us have exposed ourselves for decades without really thinking too much of it, just being like, oh, I wash my hands.
I love what you said though too, and I would encourage anyone listening as well to really try to like think of how to talk more about, this idea of staying home when you're not okay, and not fucking feeling guilty about that. And also I would include mental health in that. So if you have a panic attack, like that counts. If you're feeling extremely depressed and you don't feel safe, if you feel you have suicidal thoughts, like all of that counts as not feeling okay. All of that is a valid experience for not going to work. Because if you broke your leg, you wouldn't be going to work with your broken leg, unpatched, uncasted, without getting professionals to look at it and help you through recovery and treatment. But you're absolutely right, Christina. If that's all we take from it, that would be a huge fucking win. All right, I'm gonna end this poll. I know we're a few minutes before ending. So I'm gonna share the results, and I feel really happy to see that, you know, the grand majority, 36% say feel pretty good, I guess, considering. You know, that's the largest percentage of all the other answers. The second largest is 23% with feeling anxiety. Same, still feeling major anxiety even after this talk, but definitely feeling a lot less alone. So before we finish up, if anyone wants to add any further questions in the last couple minutes we have, or any extra comments, like please feel free to write in the chat or send in a question. Anybody from the panel, if you have any final thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to yourself and Ariel for putting this together. You guys have been doing some great work, and you guys were already doing this work years before and keeping it now more public, and it's just a time that we all need it more than ever. So thank you for your work as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just add too, if anyone is feeling that they need support or help, there's some great resources online. One of which is ca.portal.gs. It is a Canada-wide portal. People can go in, do an assessment online, and then it gives you resources, specific resources based on your assessment, including online counseling, skill-based training. So I just, you know, I think there is work still yet to be done, but it's a great opportunity, especially if you don't have the resources or you know, you don't have the funds. So.
Sorry, can you repeat was it a website link you said, Jeanette?
Yeah, it's ca.portal, portal.gs.
Okay. I will try to actually make that a hyperlink. That's not a hyperlink. And I'll also I'll add that to our Not 9 to 5 resources as well on our website. I hadn't heard of that one before.
It's new.
Yeah, okay.
I'll
so
put
that's
it
the
in.
one that I think I heard about this. That's the one that they got funding for, like, since this started, right? This is from the government?
Yep.
Yes, Wellness Together Canada. Yes, I did hear about this, and I will share it here, and I will also add it in. Oh, thank you, Jeanette. Got it. All right, well, I think, you know, I couldn't ask for a better panel. I couldn't ask for a better conversation. You guys were so honest, and you shared so much, and I know that everyone else is writing thank yous here, but thank you from us as well. Tune in Wednesday, 2 p.m. We're going to be having another Real Talk conversation, but this time skewed to the topic of substance use. So from me to you, mwah. Lots of love, guys. Miss you all.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.